On the 4th of December, 1872, a sailor aboard a British brig watched another ship move in a way ships are not supposed to move. She was sailing, but she was wandering. Her sails were part set and part torn, and she rolled with the swell like a thing that had forgotten its purpose. They closed the distance for 2 hours, hailing her again and again, and nothing came back but the wind. So a man was sent across to climb aboard. 10 people had sailed on the ship: a captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 seamen. Every one of them was gone. The food was still in the stores. The cargo was still in the hold. There was no blood, no fire, no sign of a fight. Simply no one. She was the Mary Celeste. Before that day, she had been an ordinary working vessel, and after it, she would never be ordinary again. She was built in 1861 at Spencer's Island in Nova Scotia, first named the Amazon. A wooden brigantine of 2 masts, a little over 100 feet from bow to stern. She was not a famous ship. She was a working one, carrying cargo across an ocean that swallowed a great many vessels without ceremony. In 1868, she passed to American owners and took her new name. By 1872, her principal owner was a New York merchant named James Winchester, and her captain held a share of her himself, which matters because a captain who owns part of his ship has every reason to bring her home. That captain was Benjamin Spooner Briggs, 37 years old, from a Massachusetts family that had gone to sea for generations. By every account that survives, he was careful, sober, deeply religious, and very good at his work. He did not sail alone. With him was his wife, Sarah, the daughter of a clergyman, and their daughter Sophia Matilda, who was 2 years old. The crew were 7 experienced men: a first mate, Albert Richardson, a second mate, Andrew Gilling, a steward named Edward Head, and 4 German seamen, among them 2 brothers, the Lorenzens. These were not drifters. They were chosen men with reputations on a sound ship. In early November of 1872, the Mary Celeste left a New York pier bound for Genoa in Italy. In her hold, she carried 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, not the kind anyone drinks, but the kind used in trade and manufacture, a routine cargo for a routine run. So here's the central question, and I want you to hold on to it through everything that follows. A sound ship, a skilled captain, a capable crew, a calm, ordinary voyage. So why, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, did 10 people walk away from safety and into nothing? The crossing was hard. The North Atlantic in late November is a gray and violent place, and the Mary Celeste fought weather for 2 weeks as she worked east toward the Azores. We know this because the ship kept a record. The log was the heartbeat of the voyage. Position. Weather. The small grammar of a ship doing its work. The last entry was made on the 25th of November, placing the ship near the island of Santa Maria. Nothing that reads like a final word. And then the record simply stops. Something emptied the ship of every living soul. For roughly 10 days, the Mary Celeste sailed on without anyone to sail her, wandering with the wind. The log shows no disaster, no storm strong enough to explain it, no emergency written down at all. The ship that found her was the Dei Gratia, a British brig with a Canadian crew under a captain named David Morehouse. By an odd turn, she had left New York not long after the Mary Celeste, bound for the same part of the world. When his lookout spotted a vessel moving strangely some 400 miles past the Azores, Morehouse studied her through the glass and grew uneasy. After 2 hours of watching and hailing with no reply, he sent his first mate, Oliver Deveau, across in a small boat to board her. Deveau climbed onto the deck of the Mary Celeste, and in the next several minutes he cataloged one of the strangest scenes in maritime history. The ship was deserted, not burned, not damaged into ruin. Some sails were set, some furled, and a few were torn or gone, the rigging disordered with ropes hanging over the side. There was water in the hold, about 3.5 feet of it, enough to frighten a man who did not stop to measure it, but not enough to sink a ship that size. One of the 2 pumps had been taken apart. The cargo was almost entirely there. Of the 1,701 barrels of alcohol, careful counting later found 9 of them empty and the rest untouched. A 6-month supply of food and fresh water sat in the stores. No one had gone hungry. No one had run dry. The crew's belongings were still aboard. Their clothes, their pipes, their items of value left as if set down for a moment. People who flee a fire or fight off a boarding party do not stop to leave their valuables behind. And there was no blood, no scorch of fire, no body, nothing that pointed to violence at all. But 2 things were gone. The single lifeboat, her yawl, was missing, and it did not look torn away by a wave. It looked launched, and the captain's instruments, his sextant and his chronometer, were gone, along with most of the ship's papers. Only the log remained. People do not take the sextant and the papers when a wave sweeps them overboard. They take those things when they are choosing to leave, in order, expecting to need them. Whatever emptied the Mary Celeste, the people aboard had a few minutes. Long enough to lower a boat, and to gather what a navigator would want if he hoped to find land. They got into that boat, and somewhere on that enormous ocean the boat and the 10 in it were lost, while the ship they had just abandoned sailed calmly on without them. They left a sound ship, with food, with water, with their own cargo, and chose a single small boat on the open Atlantic. What did they believe was about to happen that made an open boat the safer choice? The Daygrach's men did a hard and dangerous thing. With a skeleton crew split between two ships, they sailed the Mary Celeste roughly 800 miles to Gibraltar and brought her in on the 13th of December. Under the law of the sea, a crew that saves an abandoned vessel can claim a salvage award, so a court was convened. It sat under the Chief Justice, Sir James Cochrane, but the figure who shaped the early inquiry was the Attorney General, Frederick Solly Flood, who suspected a crime and had the ship surveyed inch by inch. There were marks that looked like blood, and cuts on the bow that looked deliberate. For a while, the court seemed to be staring at a murder dressed up as a mystery. But evidence is a stubborn thing. The reddish stains were tested and were not blood. The cuts on the bow were examined again and judged to be natural weathering, the ordinary wounds a wooden hull takes from the sea. After more than 3 months of inquiry, the court could find no evidence of foul play, no mutiny it could prove, no murder, no piracy. The salvors were paid, but the award was unusually small, about 1/5 of the combined value of ship and cargo. Historians read that low number as a quiet signal. The court could prove nothing against the rescuers, yet it could not entirely shake its own suspicion. So it paid them, grudgingly, and closed the file. There is one more thing you should know, because it is the reason so much of what people believe about this ship is wrong. In 1884, a young and not yet famous doctor named Arthur Conan Doyle published a short story, anonymously, inspired by the case. It was fiction. He invented passengers, a murder plot, and even misspelled the name, calling her the Mary Celeste. Because the story was thrilling, the public swallowed the invention whole. The half-remembered details that cling to this case, meals still warm on the table, a cup of tea still steaming, a cat asleep in the sun, almost none of that is in the record. It grew out of fiction and retelling until the legend was easier to find than the truth. On one side of the line are the things we know. The Mary Celeste was found deserted, still seaworthy, her cargo nearly intact, and her stores full. No fire, no violence, no body. Her lifeboat was launched, not torn away, and the instruments and papers went with it. A court investigated and proved no crime. Everything past this point is theory. The explanation many historians now favor is the alcohol. 9 barrels were found empty, and a change in temperature could have let vapor build in the hold. The fear of an explosion would be terrifying to a careful captain. He might order everyone into the yawl, tethered by a line, meaning to reboard once the danger passed. If that line parted in rough water, the ship would sail away, and the open boat would be lost. Other ideas have been raised. A faulty pump that made the flooding look worse than it was. A waterspout that briefly made the ship feel like a sinking one. Insurance plots and piracy were examined at Gibraltar and set aside, the untouched valuables arguing against them. Notice what the serious theories share. A competent captain comes to believe his ship is about to be lost, does the disciplined thing, and the sea takes the boat and spares the ship. The Mary Celeste herself sailed on for 13 more years, until a later captain wrecked her off Haiti in an insurance fraud. But the 10 who left her in 1872 were never accounted for. The boat was never found, and neither were the bodies. And so the ship keeps its one secret the way the ocean keeps its own.